Welcome back. Time for us to go behind the headlines. And when I covered that story about Massachusetts, it got me to thinking. The story told us about how Massachusetts had 180 some odd people that had applied for a dispensary license. They got 22 of them kicked out because they didn't meet the initial requirement of having $500,000 in reserve, in capital, liquid capital that they could prove. And this really shocked me. This $500,000 thing kind of shocked me. And then furthermore, the 158 of them that are left now are all competing for just 35 dispensary spots. Okay, so there's 35 potential dispensaries. There can only be no more than 5 dispensaries for each county in the state. There's 7 counties, so 35 dispensaries. At most, there could be fewer, right? But at most, there's 35. And there's 158 people or entities, corporations, whatever, competing for these dispensary licenses. And each one of them is going to submit a $30,000 non-refundable dispensary application fee. $30,000 just to be considered. Now, 158 of them competing for 35 spots. What's that, a 1 in 4 chance? 1 in 5, somewhere in there? That's a hell of a $30,000 bet to have to lay down, isn't it? You don't get that money back. And this means that if all 158 of them submit an application, it's going to be $4.7 million that the state of Massachusetts gets just from application fees. Now, Massachusetts is not alone in charging these non-refundable fees and forcing these dispensary businesses to have massive amounts of capital on hand. In Arizona, the applicants there have to prove they have $150,000 in startup capital. If they can prove that, then there's the $5,000 non-refundable application fee they have to pay. Now, there was 126 dispensary operators that applied in Arizona, so therefore that's about $630,000 made just from the non-refundable dispensary application fees. Now, this also applies to some of the older medical marijuana states that are now just getting around to passing dispensary laws, like Nevada. Nevada's recently passed dispensary law requires proof of $250,000 in liquid assets before you can even apply. And if you got that covered, then you got to drop another $5,000 for the non-refundable application fee. And then, if you're approved, your license costs $30,000. Now, by law, it's possible for there to be about 60 dispensaries that would open up in Nevada. So with all the fees and non-refundable applications and so forth, that's at least $2.1 million for the state of Nevada. And keep in mind, for these people that are being forced to prove they have all of this startup capital, oftentimes they don't get the benefit of putting their bank accounts or other things like that down because of all the federal interference with banking and dispensaries. So this is some really liquid assets we're talking about. And throughout the 15 medical marijuana states that have or will have an operating dispensary, lots of them have these non-refundable application fees on top of the annual licensing fees. In Washington, D.C., $5,000 to apply, $10,000 for a license. New Jersey, $2,000 to apply, $20,000 for a license. Vermont, $2,500 to apply, $30,000 for a license. Now, if you just thought, oh, well, I don't want to own a dispensary, I just want to be a grower, I want to be a producer, I want to produce the marijuana, well, they don't get off lightly either. In Colorado, a cultivator has to pay a $1,200 application fee and $2,750 for an annual license. Nevada charges $3,000 for a producer license. New Mexico requires a $1,000 application fee and up to $30,000 licensing. And in Connecticut, if you want to grow pot for the state dispensary system, it's going to cost you a $25,000 fee to apply and $75,000 a year to maintain the license. Now, with these massive upfront costs, it's no wonder dispensary marijuana ends up costing the same or even sometimes more than black market marijuana. But if you just thought, well, I'll just grow my own and avoid the cost, well, think again. If you're in Arizona, Connecticut, D.C., Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or New Jersey, You don't get the option of growing your own medicine at home. Now, all right, to be fair, Arizona does allow home grow if you're farther than 25 miles from a dispensary, which now only applies to 4.8% of the population and in very rural locations. You want to live in Tuba City, Arizona? Then you're allowed to grow your own medical marijuana. The state actually has a map with little green circles of 25-mile radius to show where where you can and cannot live if you want to grow your own marijuana. And Massachusetts does allow home grow on a case-by-case hardship exemption where you have to prove it's too far, too hard, or too expensive, or whatever. So, sounds like quite the racket when you can force all these non-refundable fees and re-up licensing charges for the state and not let patients grow their own medicine. But then again, we knew it was all a racket when we got into this business, didn't we? You got to pay a tax, right? You'll be paying the dealer tax, the prohibition tax, the medical tax, the dispensary tax.
Have you
Lots of